Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another episode of After the Buzzer, show where I recap the NBA games of the night. And what a night of playoff hoops it was. Specifically, this Sixers-Knicks series is one of the most insane playoff series I can ever remember. And today was only game 5. Like, we still have games 6 and potentially 7 left in this series. Insane performances, crazy moments, ridiculous comebacks that shouldn't even be possible in the final moments. Everything you could ask for and more. Physicality. These teams really do not like each other. The fan bases are going crazy. It's been so much fun. Easily the best series out of any of them yet. And tonight, Game 5 was the best game that we have seen up to this point. So I want to focus on that series and that game first. But of course, we will talk about the other games as well, with Cavaliers versus Magic playing their Game 5, as well as Game 5 of Bucks versus Pacers. But yeah, let's start with Sixers versus Knicks. Like I said, it's absolutely been the best series so far out of any of the first round matchups. Game 1 was this crazy back and forth game where the Sixers went up 13 in the first quarter. The Knicks pushed back and got their own 14-point lead in the third before the Sixers erased the deficit and took a lead, with the Knicks eventually pulling away due to crazy games from, out of all people, Miles McBride and Josh Hart, who throughout this whole series, but in this game in particular, was looking like Steph Curry out there. The role players really stepped up and gave the Knicks a 1-0 lead in Madison Square Garden. Game 2, again, saw the Sixers take a big lead early. They held it for the entire first half this time. The Knicks battled back to take an 8-point lead in the fourth, with the Sixers fighting back in their own way and taking a lead behind insane play from Tyrese Maxey, who ends up giving them a 5-point lead with 47 seconds left, which in most cases is safe. If you looked at an index of every team that was up 5 with 47 seconds left in a game, you're probably going to find a lot of wins for that team winning, especially because Jalen Brunson had been terrible at that game, and typically he's the guy who gives them their late game heroics. Well, he did show up. He had a crazy sidestep 3 that bounced off the rim, went up, and then fell in before you know what happens. The Knicks stole the inbound with Tyrese Maxey falling to the ground. Nick Nurse tried to call a timeout, but also didn't. They got it to Dante DiVincenzo, drilled a 3 to put them up 1 with 13 seconds left. Isaiah Hartenstein somehow blocks an insane Maxey layup attempt. The Knicks hit some free throws, close out the game to go up 2-0 in Madison Square Garden, stealing 2 games from the jaws of defeat. Then we get to Game 3 in Philadelphia, where the Sixers finally fight back. They build up a double-digit lead in the third quarter after a lot of back and forth, and hold on to it for most of the remaining game, particularly due to a 50-point, 8-rebound, 4-assist performance for Joel Embiid, who's not only on a bad knee, but is also dealing with Bell's palsy, which causes partial paralysis in one side of the face. It leads to hypersensitivity in the eyes due to light, which there's a lot of light in those NBA arenas. There's cameras flashing. The elements are not in his favor, yet he still went out there, dropped 50, hit 5 threes, defended at an insane level, was the leading scorer down those final moments where they built up that lead and held on to it. It was a statement playoff performance, the best game that maybe Embiid has ever played in the playoffs for a guy who's been slandered for his playoff performance pretty often in the past. And dealing with all of this, it was a heroic effort to give the Sixers finally a win in this series. But that wouldn't last long, because then in Game 4, Jalen Brunson goes out there and has his best game yet, dropping 47 points, 4 rebounds, and 10 assists on 53% shooting, helping the Knicks erase yet another Sixers double-digit lead, including dropping 9 points in the fourth quarter. The Knicks also completely clamped Joel Embiid. OG Anunoby was huge on that end. Sixers had a chance to cut it late, but Embiid passes up a mid-range jumper, tries to go inside and scores, misses. The Sixers lose. Knicks fans are chanting MVP to Jalen Brunson at the line. They take over the Wells Fargo Center, and the Knicks push it to a 3-1 series lead, going back to Madison Square Garden, which is where tonight we had Game 5, which again was the best game yet somehow. Like, the first 4 games, all of them could be the best game in a majority of series that we've seen played in this first round. However, in this series, it's just another normal matchup, and this one was again ridiculous. The Sixers, like they have a couple of times this series, jumped out to an early lead, in fact leading the entire first quarter, with the Knicks again striking back with a double-digit lead of their own right before halftime, and eventually went to the break up 6. It was mostly in the first half a duel between Jalen Brunson and Tyrese Maxey, both of them at 15 at half, while Joel Embiid was really struggling, and these are all themes that would continue throughout the second half as well. The third quarter saw the lead fluctuate a lot before the Sixers were down just 1 going into the fourth, where they had a pretty hot start. They started to build up some momentum. It felt like maybe the Sixers would get out of this one, but Then the Knicks snagged the momentum right back. Role players who have been great all series like Josh Hart, Miles McBride, OG Anunoby really started to get going. The Sixers turned it over a billion times, particularly Joel Embiid, who was so gassed. He was never going to the face-up game. It was always the post-up. The ball was getting poked away from him from behind. He was throwing lazy passes. Everybody was. This team could not hold on to the basketball. Meanwhile, Brunson was getting some buckets. He was starting to turn up a lot. The Knicks were cooking. However, the Sixers were doing just barely enough to stay in this game, particularly Tyrese Maxey, who started to reach historic levels in this game late in the fourth quarter. But then the Knicks went up 5 with a minute 39 left. Maxey hit a floater trying to fight back. The Knicks went back up 5 with a minute 12 left before a couple of baskets changed hands, and ultimately, the Knicks went up 6 with a Miles McBride jumper with 29 seconds remaining. Earlier in the video, we talked about a 5-point lead with about 47 seconds remaining being somewhat safe, it feels like, or at least the team that's in the lead there wins a large majority of times. If you looked at every team that's ever had a 6-point lead in a playoff game with 29 seconds left, I think you're going to find like at most 3 occurrences where the team that was leading there ended up losing the game, or the game even got to overtime. This is a safe lead in pretty much any game, and the series at this moment felt over. My brother, as I've said a bunch of times on this channel, and if you watch the podcast, you'll know, is a massive Sixers fan. Him and I were texting back and forth. He's saying, it's over. Like, I can't believe we're falling apart like this. And just kind of resigned himself. And I did too. You know, I was rooting for the Sixers to extend this series because I don't want it to be over yet. This has been the most entertaining series by far, but I reached a point where I was like, okay, it's over. I saw, Knicks fans' victory lapping on the timeline saying that Embiid got knocked out. There was like a Stat Muse post where they said that this was the first Knicks series clinching win, I think, at Madison Square Garden in like 20-some years or something like that. Everybody presumed this game was over, except for one man, and that man was Tyrese Maxey. He physically refused to lose. He said, we are not going out like this. I'm going to keep our season alive, and he willed it into existence. He got Mitchell Robinson in the air off a pump fake from the three-point line, hits the and 1-3, converts the free throw to cut the lead to 2. Josh Hart ends up getting the ball, getting fouled, only hits one of the free throws, so Philly gets the ball back, 15 seconds left, down 3. And who other than Tyrese Maxey sprints up the court faster than anybody can try to foul him to prevent him from getting a shot off, and drills a logo 3 to go ahead and tie the game up with about 9 seconds left. It was one of the most insane shots I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of people like on Inside the NBA, they were talking about why did they foul. I don't think they could. Maxey was a blur. You blinked, and all of a sudden he was at half court pulling up, drilling a leaning forward 3 like it was nothing. I think this gave him 41 points on the night. The Knicks still had a chance to go ahead and try and win this one in regulation. Brunson goes up with a floater, but Batum blocks the shot, sends it to overtime, and Tyrese Maxey saves their season like he did all year when Embiid was out with injury, keeping them afloat. He scores 7 points in 17 seconds, looking like Tracy McGrady out there to get this game to overtime. It was one of the most insane stretches from a single player I've ever seen. Again, 7 points in 17 seconds to save a game where you're down 6 with less than 30 seconds to go. That really shouldn't even be possible. In overtime, the Knicks went up 5 due to 2 big Brunson buckets, which made it seem like maybe that was all for naught what Maxey did, but then he drilled a 3. Embiid made some big plays, looking way better in overtime. He was legitimately perfect. In OT, didn't miss a shot, didn't turn the ball over. The defense was great. Sixers as a whole forced some turnovers, and they end up taking a 4-point lead with 16 seconds left, which they would hold on to as Tyrese Maxey ices the game at the line to finish with 46 points, 5 rebounds, and 9 assists on 50% shooting with 7 threes, while playing a ridiculous 51 minutes to get the 76ers to a Game 6 of this series and single-handedly keep their season alive. It was one of the craziest playoff games I've ever seen and one of the best individual performances of all time that I have witnessed live sitting here at my desk watching games. I cannot believe the Sixers are alive, and I texted my brother the same thing like 2 hours after the game wrapped. I said, I cannot believe this is going to a Game 6. The Sixers went from everybody assuming it was over to living another day because of pretty much Tyrese Maxey alone. On a night where their MVP really struggled, he's clearly not himself and was just all around bad today. The role players, some of them were playing well, but some weren't. They were dead in the water. But Maxey, as he has been all year, was the key for this team. We know most of the time what we're going to get from Joel Embiid. It's a bit hit or miss at times in the playoffs. But if the Sixers ever want to go out there and try and compete for a championship, get beyond the second round where they've been hard stuck for years, Tyrese Maxey is the key both now and going forward, because I reached a point where even if they lost this game, I was like, honestly, you can still take away from this that Maxey is a massive bright spot. He announced himself on the national stage tonight that not only is he a star, but he is an all-NBA level player. He's one of the best guards in the association. In my opinion, very much deserved this most improved player award, because I don't think people realize just how much he has carried the Sixers team in the absence of Joel Embiid, and in a game where he was absent in terms of his play, although he was there physically, Maxey one more time stepped up like he always has. You want to talk about players that keep their teams alive however possible, Maxey's one of those guys. He is built for the moment. Regardless of what happens for the rest of the series, whether the Sixers go on to win this one in 7 or the Knicks close it out in 6 or 7, this was a career-defining moment for Tyrese Maxey, who is the future of this team. They're going to sign him to a massive contract this offseason, and with him, Embiid in town, and a bunch of money to spend in the offseason, regardless of how this ends, because they have Tyrese Maxey next to Embiid, who is the best teammate that's ever played with Joel, I feel confident that the Sixers are still in a good spot. Plus, the rest of the supporting cast deserves a shout out, because there were some really solid plays from guys in here too, like Oubre was big with 14 points. Tobias Harris, as much slack as everybody has given him throughout the series, he had his best game so far, 19 points, did it efficiently, big rebounds as well throughout this. Batum had some timely threes. Same thing with Cameron Payne, whose jump shot form literally looks like it hurts, but he still knocked down big threes. This was a team win for the Sixers. We talked about the Knicks showing this grit and this refusal to die this entire season. This was that moment for the Sixers. And there have been a lot of times where the Sixers have just rolled over and given up, they've fallen apart. Not in this one. And maybe that's a good sign for the rest of the way for Sixers fans. Maybe the Knicks still win, but regardless, this was a statement from them that they're not going to give up. And from Maxey in particular, who I hope national audiences are realizing is way more special than he gets credit for. As for the Knicks, this was one of the rare occasions where they didn't really execute down the stretch. A bunch of turnovers, some bad decisions. There was one moment late in this game in overtime where Jalen Brunson started to go for a shot, but realized that Batum was going to block it, or that it was super contested. Tried to pass it off to Isaiah Hartenstein, who was already cutting to try and get the rebound, so it just sails out of bounds. Just some rough mistakes. And Brunson was still ridiculously good. Like, he was amazing. I don't think the Knicks played bad necessarily. It just took insane heroics from the Sixers to go ahead and get the win. They are going to have to lock back in, stay steady for Game 6 and 7, which I imagine they will. I cannot wait for Game 6. The Sixers have a lot of momentum, but again, this Knicks team refuses to ever quit. Game 6, I imagine, will be another bloodbath, another physical, grinded out effort that's going to end in something insane like every game has so far. I hope this series goes to 7, because selfishly, I don't want this series to end with how great the basketball has been. Let me know what you think about this series. Who do you have winning the rest of the way, and what do you think about the Tyrese Maxey masterclass? Let's talk about the other games. I want to start off with Cavs Magic, Game 5. I feel like not a lot of people have watched this series compared to some of the other ones, especially because this game, a lot of it took place during Sixers-Knicks, which of course went to overtime. But this was a really fun one. The Cavs led for most of the game, went up by double digits in the second quarter, went back and forth in the third and fourth quarters, mainly because of Paolo Banchero, who was unbelievably special in this game. We want to talk about Maxey making an announcement to the world in his game. Paolo did the same thing tonight. In the second half alone, had 27 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists on 10 to 15 shooting, and an incredible display of mid-range jumpers, fadeaways, turnarounds, massive key threes, attacking the basket, using his physicality, defending well. This was an announcement of his arrival as a rookie in a pivotal Game 5 where the team that wins a Game 5 in a tied series almost always goes on to win. He tried to do everything, including hitting a jumper to put them up 1 point with 2 minutes and 6 seconds left. But then the Cavs got a couple buckets from Mobley, including one off an incredible dime from Garland, who was great tonight. They still had a chance to tie the game down 2 with a few seconds left, but Franz Wagner attacks, Evan Mobley gets a massive block, Spida ices the game at the free throw line, and the Cavaliers are going to go to Orlando Game 6 with a 3-2 lead. Paolo as a whole finishes with 39, 11, 2, 1, and 3. One of the best performances of the playoffs so far, especially coming from a guy of his age in his first ever playoff series. To be honest, I wish he was the one taking the last shot. Not that Franz isn't really good, because he is, and that's a shot that he makes a lot of the time, but Mobley just had incredible timing. I just feel like when you have a guy who's doing all the stuff that Paolo had done up to that point, he should get the ball in those final moments, so I don't love that necessarily. For the Cavaliers, Garland had a great game, 23, 5, and 5. Mitchell had 28, 6, 2, and 2. Not his best shooting night, but got it done. Strus had 16 points with 4 threes. No Jared Allen in this game, so their front court was a little bit thin, which led to Marcus Morris, out of all people, playing 25 minutes off the bench, and he had 12 points. Like, they don't win this game without Marcus Morris, who is insane. Maybe he stays in the rotation. but it was just a gutsy win from the Cavaliers, facing a Magic team that refuses to quit despite being the underdogs, people doubting them all season. Paolo tried his best, but they weren't able to get over the hump. The Cavs only need one more game now to move on to the second round for the first time in this Donovan Mitchell era, but the Magic aren't going to go out easily, and I fully do expect them to try and win that Game 6 to the best of their ability. I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if we come back to Cleveland for a Game 7, which kind of keeping my fingers crossed, to be honest. And finally, there was Game 5 for Bucks Pacers, which felt like it was going to end the series tonight. The Bucks were going to once again be without Dame or Giannis. They got blown out the last game that was the situation. The Pacers have been building up a lot of momentum, but it didn't matter. The Pacers start off with a 10-point lead, but after the first few minutes of the second quarter, the Bucks led the rest of the way, eventually pushing the lead to 27 points. They decimated the Pacers, and we've seen at times this year that the Pacers can kind of play down to their competition. That was kind of the situation here, but it wasn't just like all the Pacers being bad. Specifically, huge shout to the Bucks defense. They've been a team that has struggled to defend for a lot of the season, but in this one, they clamped up maybe better than I've seen them do all season, which Doc Rivers deserves a ton of credit for getting these guys to continue to believe and buying in on that defensive end against one of the best offenses in the sport. They held them to under 100 points. Pat Bev, crazy performance from him, starting at the point guard spot, 13 points, 4 rebounds, 12 dimes, really orchestrating everything, 2 steals and a block. Middleton had 29, 12, and 5, played good again. Portis finally showed up after getting ejected last game, said that he had to redeem himself, had 29 and 10, massive game from him. Lopez had 12, Beasley had 18. Everybody contributed, stay focused defensively, and they kept this series alive, which may have been just enough because, according to Doc Rivers and a lot of reports, Dame and Giannis are getting very close to returning. It's not guaranteed that they'll be back for Game 6, but it feels like a legitimate possibility, which is the nightmare scenario for the Pacers. Really felt like they had to close it out tonight. They've given them hope. Maybe the superstars return. That could have been the dagger for them. I'm not going to say it's over or anything, because I do think the Pacers can get a win even with Giannis and Dame playing, but they're going to have to be way better than they were in this one. Just 13 points from Miles Turner, 16 from Halliburton, 12 from Siakam, 12 from Nembhard. Didn't look anything like themselves. They were rattled, and maybe it's the lack of experience, it's the youth, but they just, again, play down to their competition like they've done a lot of the year. They've now got to try and salvage this thing in Game 6, where they may be playing the full-strength Milwaukee Bucks. But yeah, with all that being said, those are my thoughts on these games. Let me know what your opinions are down below in the comments, your biggest takeaways. Who do you have winning each of these series? And again, let me know what you thought about that Knicks-Sixers game. It was unbelievable. What do you think about that series as a whole? Who do you have winning it? Been so much fun in these playoffs so far. It's been one of the most exciting first rounds that I can remember. So many storylines, so many crazy performances. Been having a lot of fun covering it too. If you've been enjoying these videos, this one in particular, leave a like and subscribe. It would really help the channel out. Also, leave a like and subscribe, as well as hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future uploads. Going to be a lot more covering the playoffs as well, starting to put out some series previews for the second round. I think tomorrow, if not the day after, probably will be tomorrow, you're going to be getting the series preview for Minnesota versus Denver, which is going to be such an incredible series. I cannot wait. So be on the lookout for that, as well as, again, just coverage whenever these games wrap up every night. For the moment, though, I appreciate you all watching. I will see you all later. Real one, say it back.